In regard to the Central Powers, three countries generally come to mind: the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. The often forgotten fourth member of the Central Powers was the Kingdom of Bulgaria. Bulgaria, despite being the smallest and least known of these powers, was far from uninvolved in the First World War. Because Bulgaria is so often skipped over, it leads one to ask, to what extent did Bulgaria actually influence the war? To answer this question, one must determine why they decided to join the Central Powers and what Bulgaria actually did during the war. Bulgaria was a relatively young state, having gained its independence just a few years prior in 1908. At the outbreak of World War One, Bulgaria had only just survived another intense territorial war. The Balkan Wars left Bulgaria exhausted, so much to the point where after the war the government's primary goal was, quote, to repair the nation's morale and face the economic consequences. While the Balkan Wars exclusively took place in the eponymous Balkan Peninsula, their effects were felt throughout all of Europe. Bulgaria was well aware of her volatile position in the greater European community. In many ways, Bulgaria took a leading role in a dress rehearsal for the Great War. The Balkan Wars heavily influenced the other European powers' approach to warfare, as the, quote, swiftness and decisiveness of the battle in the Balkans encouraged Europe's military planners for frontal attack with superior forces. These wars resulted in more than just this influence on the great powers of Europe, but also saw an increase in Bulgaria's consciousness of her influence on and relationships with neighboring powers, specifically Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire. Bulgaria and Austria-Hungary had a contentious relationship, to say the least. During the First Balkan War, Austria-Hungary supported the Ottomans against Bulgaria. Even so, this did not affect the Bulgarian opinion of Austria-Hungary by the time World War I broke out. Rather, Tsar Ferdinand tried to argue that, quote, in fighting Serbia, Bulgaria had not only fought for herself, but also for Austria-Hungary. This argument was undermined, however, in the fact that the treaty between Bulgaria and Serbia was rather anti-Austrian. As for the Ottomans, Bulgaria had only recently gained her independence from them. Bulgaria fought the Ottomans in both Balkan Wars. Even having lost the second one, Bulgaria still made notable gains in territory, all of which was formerly owned by the Ottoman Empire. Despite the relationship with the other two Central Powers, Bulgaria and Germany had a very close relationship. Both Ferdinand and Prime Minister Radoslav held strong pro-German sentiments. To both men, it was only a matter of time before Bulgaria entered on the side of her German allies. Amidst the political turmoil, Bulgarians wished to, quote, sit on the fence and observe the fortunes of war before deciding whether to declare their sympathies. Ignoring this, the government of Bulgaria involved themselves in the war almost immediately after it began. Now, why did Bulgaria decide to side with the Central Powers, despite the aforementioned tensions with two of the main three? It can mostly be traced to their rivalry with Serbia. Bulgaria's primary enemy in the Second Balkan War was Serbia, not the Ottomans. Bulgaria resented Serbia for getting more of the territory out of the First War, not to mention the fact that the two peoples had been rivals for quite some time prior. Bulgaria saw an opportunity to get even with Serbia and took full advantage of it. Furthermore, Bulgaria had been building up her army in an act of armed neutrality. This caused significant tensions with the Entente powers. On the 18th of September or the 1st of October, those being the New Style or Old Style dates, Russia presented an ultimatum in Sofia demanding the end of hostile acts, being Bulgarian troops amassing on the Serbian border, and the dismissal of German officers within the Bulgarian army. 3 days later, Britain and France associated themselves with the Russian note. On the 22nd of September or the 5th of October, the Bulgarians rejected the ultimatum, and within 2 days, all the Entente ministers had left Sofia. By this time, the Allied offensive in Serbia was making significant progress, and thus assured of victory, the Bulgarian army attacked on the Serbs on the 28th of September or 11th of October. This attack would drastically shift the tide in the war in the Balkans. Bulgaria had signed a secret treaty with Germany just weeks before the attack on Serbia, locking themselves in with the Central Powers. In terms of wartime logistics, Bulgaria was integral to any military success the Ottomans could hope to claim. Bulgaria sat in the middle of the trade route between Germany and Austria-Hungary to the Ottoman Empire. If Bulgaria had chosen to side with the Allies or even remain neutral, the Ottomans would have been left without access to any German or Austrian supplies. Bulgaria's largest influence in the war ended up not being any amount of military action, but her participation in transporting supplies to the Ottomans. In fact, it is highly likely that the Allied assault on Gallipoli would have gone much better, and possibly even broken through to Istanbul, if not for the weapons delivered to the Ottomans through Bulgaria. This success, however, was rather short-lived. The Allies knew Bulgaria needed to be knocked out of the war as soon as possible. Shortly before Bulgaria's entry into the war, British military command was calculating how Bulgarian involvement would adversely affect Allied plans. They planned how to keep Bulgaria out of the war, arguing, quote, entry of Greece into the war would give best guarantee of succoring Serbia if again attacked by Austria, and maintenance of Greek forces intact would have initially a deterrent effect on Bulgaria. It would not be until September of 1918 when the Allied powers would finally actually break through and defeat the Bulgarians. When the Vardar offensive was launched, Bulgaria all but collapsed under relentless Allied assault. French, Serbian, and Senegalese troops broke the Bulgarian line, allowing the RAF to, quote, pour bombs on the enemy columns trapped in rocky ravines, the first real victory of air power. Simultaneously, a large-scale anti-monarchist rebellion, known as the Radomir Rebellion, broke out across Bulgaria. Bulgarian citizens were outraged with their government's involvement in the war for a number of reasons, and among the largest of these was the German influence of the Bulgarian economy and food purchases in particular, and German forces occupying the southern Dobruja. Spurred on by Woodrow Wilson's inflammatory 14 points, the Bulgarian rebels overthrew Tsar Ferdinand on the 27th September of the same year. Between the Vardar Offensive and the Radomir Rebellion, Bulgaria capitulated. Under the strict terms of surrender, Bulgaria was obliged to surrender all her war material. This was interpreted by the Allied Military Commission as applying not merely to arms and munitions, but to each and every material object which at the end of the war was found in the army's depots. Just a month later, World War I would come to an end across all of Europe. For Bulgaria, World War I was the event that thrust her into the modern world. While Bulgaria had gained her independence just a decade before the end of the war, she still held her 19th century diplomacy and old leadership. While Boris III was implemented as Tsar after his father's abdication, he ruled very differently. Interwar-era Bulgaria still held her old cultural and economic ways, but drastically adjusted her diplomacy. Although Bulgaria would join Germany yet again during the next World War, it was much more reluctantly and based purely on self-preservation. Even though Bulgaria is often forgotten in regard to the First World War, her involvement with Central Powers significantly delayed Allied victory. While it can be argued that Bulgaria bet on the wrong horse in choosing to side with Germany, it is hard to imagine a world in which that did not happen. Due to Bulgaria's intense rivalry with Serbia, it would be all for impossible for the two nations to have sided together. World War I served as a grave lesson for Bulgaria about the dangers of sacrificing political safety for imperial ambitions. Had Bulgaria not focused so much on claiming as much territory in the Balkans as possible, she might not have had to suffer the repercussions of losing the World War. Nonetheless, Bulgaria had an amazing amount of influence on the war's outcome, especially for such a small and young country in the Balkans. Before I end the video, I have a couple notes I'd like to share. First of all, I know I've been gone for about a year and come back with no warning. Life gets busy, as I'm sure you can all imagine. In that time I was gone, though, I gained over 500 or so additional subscribers. I surpassed 1,000, which just amazes me. Thank you all so much for your support, and I hope to continue receiving that support, and also I hope to send it back by making more videos again. I hope to get back into that pattern now. Also, I'm sure you noticed this video had kind of a different tone to it. It was a bit more academic. I'm trying to go for a higher style, I guess you could say. Take these a bit more seriously now. I have a couple older videos that you'll probably see me release at some point that were incomplete, partially finished ones from years ago. So if you see some tonal differences, that explains that. But for the most part, I'm going to start shifting to these more complex videos where I can really dive into an interesting topic in a lot more detail. I also hope to very soon start coming out with additional videos than just my regular history things, talking about events through a historical lens or historical-based interviews. I'm currently working out the details on all of those. I can't tell you when to expect to see any of them, but hopefully you will enjoy them. That being said, I guess that's pretty much all for today, so thank you all very much, and I hope to see you again soon. This has been Matthew from Late Modern History.
Goodbye, goodbye, wet a tear, baby dear, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know, I'll feel sick of the death to go. Don't cry, don't sigh, there's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin, na boo toodaloo, goodbye.